Hey there, fellow entrepreneurs. I'm Sue, and you've just stepped into Entrepreneurs Gone Wild. Every week, I'll introduce you to a friend of mine, a remarkable entrepreneur who's not just changing the world, but also harnessing a secret weapon, time outdoors. Together, we'll dive into their journey, unpack invaluable business advice, and discover why embracing the wild is not just good for the soul, but also a goldmine for inspiration and innovation. Ready to uncover the secret that's boosting bottom lines and fueling joy? Hit subscribe and join us in the wild. Ladies and gentlemen, I am really excited to introduce to you George Bryant, who I've known for a little while, but we've never had a little sit down like this. So this is going to be pretty freaking awesome. He's a visionary entrepreneur and a marketing expert. He went from being a U.S. Marine to being the New York Times best-selling author. That doesn't happen every day. George's journey is inspiring, and his philosophy is relationships beat algorithms. Let that soak in for a second. That's pretty awesome. He's revolutionized the customer journeys for major brands. He leads the Relationships Beat Algorithms Alliance, sharing insights on authentic connections in business, and through coaching and events, he helps put the heart into marketing. And that's an acronym. We might talk about that. We'll see. But get ready to meet a maverick who's putting human connections at the forefront of business success. George, welcome to Entrepreneurs Gone Wild. I am really happy to have you here.
I'm honored. I'm honored. I feel like we could have recorded like the first 15 minutes, or I would have just talked to you for the next like 8 hours. And I'm like, we're just gonna have to do this again just for fun and not record it. Like, I'm so honored to be here.
Well, I'm so stoked. I've learned so much from you over the years. It's been a while, but man, you got stuff. So, all right, I'm going to slow myself down because I get excited, but talk about like who you help and what problem you're helping them to solve.
Yeah, 1000%. And here's what I'll say too. Like, I hate bios, but they're like a necessary evil. Like, throw it in the trash. Like today, I'm like a B+ dad, an A- partner, like, an A friend. Like, I think all too often people get their identities wrapped up in the labels and the stories instead of who you choose to be today. So I always like to throw that out there because I have a soft spot and a mission for helping entrepreneurs scale their businesses, but doing it in alignment, which is why I love you and your mission so much, because the one mistake that I made my whole career was I sacrificed my entire life and myself in the process of things that never really mattered. And all too often, and every time it caught me, and I paid for it. And I realized that who we are and the values that we have are the most important things. And there is no, I'll do this later. I'll start this when, like, it's today. And, I help entrepreneurs scale, and it doesn't matter if they're a 4-figure, 5-figure. I work all the way up with billionaires and multi-billionaires because I teach principles, but there's this part where we lose our identity inside of what we're doing. And it's actually the thing that gets in the way. And so, on paper, I'd call it marketing and customer journey, right? But even the relationships beat algorithms, the most important one is with yourself. And I joke with people and I'm like, everybody thinks they want to scale their business. And I'm like, but scaling doesn't come from acquisition. It comes from retention, and retention comes from relationships. And you can't have relationships with people who pay you money unless you're willing to have a relationship with yourself.
Ooh.
And so it's kind of like this bucket where, like, even in the last month, I've helped a woman doing 6-figure scale to 7. I helped somebody double their business and their supplement company, but it's actually through connecting with people, and it's through actually serving. And even in the lens of business, because a lot of entrepreneurs listen to this, the most important thing to recognize is that products are not relationships. They're just a bridge to an after state. They're not the thing that somebody's looking for. It's the thing they're using to become that person. And most of the business that we do business with brands or people or products that we have a relationship with, that we share values with. And all too often, and I'm seeing this across the board, people fall into the trap of being everybody else's version of themselves, somebody else's framework, somebody else's product, somebody else's service. And yeah, quote unquote, on paper, you might think it's a hockey stick, but you'll realize that it dissipates quickly. And what you're still left with is you, right? And I even joke, and this is why I love what you do. I love entrepreneurs because the first thing they'll say is like, oh, I'm like, what do you want? And they're like, I want more time, money, and freedom. I'm like, great, give me your phone, take a week off. And they're like, I don't know what to do, right? And I was like, and the way that I put this is that most of us spend our entire lives ignoring the one relationship we're guaranteed to spend the rest of it with, which is ourselves, right? And
Oh,
entrepreneur is the
yeah.
greatest gift in the world because it's a mirror and there's nowhere to hide from it, right? Our habits, our behaviors, our patterns, our beliefs, they tell us everything about how we show up.
Mm.
And it's one of like the deepest parts of like what I do is like, because entrepreneurs also make a difference in the world. Like your
Yeah.
resources, your cash flow, the people you help change the world. But if we're our own lid, because we don't know how to look in the mirror and we don't know how to grow and we don't know how to iterate, it doesn't matter what you do in business. All the same problems are going to repeat themselves. And so it's kind of like my soft spot to be the Robin Hood of marketing. I help these big brands scale to hundreds and billions of dollars. And then I turn around on my podcast and I'm like, hey, do you want help? Here's exactly what we're doing. Let's go do it. Let's go play the game. Let's go put this into practice. And I
Yeah.
think, you know, one of the easy ways that I remind people of this, and it's really a lesson in humility. It's like in the game of entrepreneurship, you have the playbook, which is the actual things that you execute in the business, but you also have the player. And that's the thing that everybody neglects. And if I take Tom Brady's playbook and I give it to a high school quarterback, he can't go play on the New England Patriots. The plays are the same, but he hasn't become the person to execute those plays. And that's the part that everybody neglects. And why I love what you do is because the moment you get out in nature, the moment you get outside, the moment you create space for yourself, you start to have this very rapid mirror of an invitation of a workout of like what's missing or what opportunity exists for you to become that version of yourself. And that's probably what I love more than anything. And welcome to my dirty little secret. I use marketing and mindset to Trojan horse into you loving yourself, but that's really what I do at the deepest level.
That's huge. And, you know, it's such a crazy thing. Like you were saying, like that mirror, I think entrepreneurs, it gets very uncomfortable to put the phone down. Like it's a withdrawal. There's that adrenaline, really, like, what do I do? That panic of, oh my gosh, I'm standing still now. What if I can't get moving again, you know? And oh, if you can help, you know, anybody you can help to find that relationship with themselves, that the ripple effects from that is just, oh my gosh, we become unstoppable once we can do that and show others, you know?
And to your point, I think what's so important about it is like the best results and success that you'll ever create are because you're unattached to them.
Yeah.
But if your identity is roped up into it, then we're determining our value based on the results we create. And I love that Ed Milet says this. He said it better than anybody. He said, you should determine your value based on the integrity of your inputs, not the results that they create. Because when you're attached to the results, you stop planting the seeds that are going to create the harvest in the future anyways. And it's one of those things. Like I even joke, I did this at an event. You'll appreciate this because I had a room full of millionaires at this event. And I was like, hey, listen, I'm going to give you guys one assignment for the break. I'm going to brief all of the rules. And I bet all of you 10 grand that you won't be able to go do it without asking me a question. They're like, oh, I'll take that bet all day. And I'm like, and I'm going to show you how to get a room full of millionaires to scramble like cockroaches. And they're like, okay. And I'm like, all right, so here's the deal. On the break, the moment we go on this 2-hour break, all of you are going to leave your phones, your notebooks, and your computers in the room. And all of you are going to go outside and find a spot to sit. And you're going to set a timer for 10 minutes. But here's the rules. You can't write anything down. You can't try to think about anything. And anything that you find, you have to leave it in that spot. So if you notice you're not breathing, breathe. If you notice you're down a vein, just look at a bird or water in front of you. And I was like, all right, everybody go. And I swear, Sue, every hand went up and I'm like, all of you pay me. And they're like, well, what about this? Or what if I get the best business idea? Or what if I do this? And I was like, this is the craziest part. We never spend time just being in a relationship with ourselves. And truthfully, and this is also what I love about entrepreneurs. If we look at any entrepreneur who had an idea and started following it, it's because before all that noise was there, they were in tune with their intuition or self to be able to take that action. And the way that I remind myself of this was from a shaman years ago, because I'm a big man of faith, like love God, love Jesus. And he said this to me, a shaman, right? Like plant medicine shaman. And he wouldn't let me drink the medicine because he said, your biggest problem is you've never been quiet enough to hear God's whispers.
Wow.
And it's never left me since. And I genuinely, the reason I love your show is because the one practice that I have every single day that I will never get rid of is my stillness practice. And if I was to summarize it for entrepreneurs, it's genuinely practicing boredom. Like it's just allowing yourself to be whatever the thoughts are, whatever the ruminations are, whatever the feelings are, the anxieties are. But like every morning I wake up, and I live in Montana, I will walk outside barefoot, regardless of the weather, and just stare at the mountains. And I'll be 5 minutes, or I'll wake up and lay in bed, lights off, eyes open, and just be. And it really is like tuning into ourselves and that inner message, that inner dialogue. I call it God. You might call it intuition. You might call it source. You might call it a bigger power. But it's this like internal compass where we know, we just pretend not to and get caught up in all the noise and distractions around us.
That's for sure. Man, I love that. I have a kind of a middle of the night thing that I'll do. So we're currently living in a barn.
Yep.
Hopefully the wind noise is not too bad. But so in the middle of the night, when you got to go use the porta potty outside, like stand outside and look up at the stars, you know, yeah, you're freezing your butt off, but oh my gosh, it's like that. I'm able to go, God, you made this. Like, oh, you're up, I'm up. Like, cool, let's talk, you know, like it's the best thing. And that sense of being able to be still, that is, it's a lost art.
Well, and like, here's the crazy thing, because I want to paint the picture for everybody listening to this, but like you and I were joking how I was pretty much raised Gen X, even though I'm on the tail end of millennials. But like I was on as an entrepreneur before Instagram existed. Like you go back to 2000 and there were multi-million-dollar businesses that were faxing each other and phone calling each other and still doing 10, 20, $30 million a year, not because they didn't have access to their phone, but because they were being intentional about their space and how they responded. And I know, you know, Alex Sharfin, but Alex, I love this. And he's one of my dear friends, but he has this quote and he says, you don't have the business you want because you haven't become the person to run it. And I take it one step further. You don't have the business or the life you want because you haven't become the person to run it. But I think this is a really powerful point for entrepreneurs and everybody in the power of space, which is why I love that you're opening a retreat center and I cannot wait to visit. And like, yes. Is that I said this to one of my team members a couple of years ago, and I said, our perspective is the difference between our prison and our power, right? And if you take a 5-figure entrepreneur who's facing challenges in their business right now, and you grab an 8-figure entrepreneur and throw them in that bucket, none of the information has changed, but the person's perspective and their relationship with it makes one of them feel disempowered and the other one feel empowered. One sees it as an obstacle and one sees it as an opportunity. But the information isn't different. It's our ability to step away from it, remove the emotion that's getting us to react, and then choose how to respond. But it's a muscle. And if it's a muscle that you never flex, and it's that muscle that you constantly ignore, and the world, social media, your phone dictates how you feel, the way that your reticular activating system works is if it's triggered by this, it's going to seem more like that. But when you can remove yourself and step away from it and shift your perspective and get down to the ingredients or the information itself, what you find is the thing to respond to that's going to give you the best chance of success. But nobody flexes that muscle. And so instead, like I'll say this to entrepreneurs right now, I'm like, you show me your morning routine and not what's in it, and I'll show you where your success lies. Because if your alarm goes off and the first thing you do is scroll through Instagram, you just let the world dictate how you feel that day. You're getting on the field of the game of your life without putting your pads on. I don't do a call or check my phone till 10 a.m. Like by the time I'm checking whatever's happening in the world, my son's handled, I'm handled, my practice is done, it doesn't mean I don't have the feelings. I still have imposter syndrome. I still have scarcity. I still have fear. Where's the next business deal going to close? What if that one doesn't close? Like what's happening? I haven't heard from them. But I'm not touching anything where that emotion or reaction is going to cause permanent damage based on a temporary feeling. And that's the power of space.
Yeah, that's huge. And it's such a simple thing. And yet it's so hard, I guess, for us to do it. Like we're conditioned, you know, hustle, work your face off. You can sleep when you're dead, all this kind of stuff. And it's like,
I used to say it. I was a Marine. I got to own it. Like I used to be that guy. And I'm like, I didn't realize that by saying that I was killing myself earlier.
Yes. And thank goodness, you know, we have these wake ups, you know, and it's like, wait a second, that does not have to be my life or my story and the impact that we have all this potential impact we can make to make this world better. And if we cut it short because we've destroyed ourselves or we've turned ourselves into this quivering mess of whatever on the floor, what a loss. Like,
Yeah. And like to that point, I think it's really, really important too. It's like, if we look at a kid, like for anybody of us that are parents, right? Like I have 2 kids that I love dearly, and I'll probably have more on the way with my partner in the future. And it's like when we see a kid go from like laying on their belly to crawling, every time they fall and stumble, we don't guilt and shame them or fault and blame them. We celebrate the progress, and we look at ourselves as entrepreneurs, right? There's no guidebook for being a parent. Good luck writing one. Good luck. Like, how do you prep for when your kid throws up in your mouth for the first time, or like you thought you packed everything and you're on an airplane and there's an emergency? Like, there's no prep whatsoever.
yeah.
And entrepreneurship is no different, but yet we hold this standard of like, it's gotta be perfect, and we miss the steps where we have to iterate through the process. But most of the time, the only person we're holding hostage is ourselves, right? Like one of my favorite quotes that landed for me years ago is, I had a very wise mentor, and he said, "A student says I already know, and a master says thanks for the reminder."
Oh, that's
And
so good.
really resonated deeply with me, because I can tell you right now, for all the millions of dollars I've made and lost, all the companies I've scaled and lost and won and lost, and like all of it, the only time I truly ever lost is when I thought I was done. Like I thought I made it, right? Like, oh, I'm the best at this, or no, that's how it works every single time. And really, I'm just delaying the pain until it smacks me in the face. And then I get to take a new action anyways. But like, to your point, it's like all of us are presented with these opportunities and even visions, right? Like no one has your vision. Nobody can see your vision but you.
Yeah.
But if you're confident that it's going to look exactly like the blueprint, I promise you it's not your vision, because no one's walked it before. Like you got to stumble through the dark, and you got to do it with confidence and belief in yourself in order to bring it to life. And I think that that's a part that we miss, because we have this like consume everybody's attention, the doom scroll. Like when I started on social media, Facebook's timeline was linear, and Instagram said you got to the end of your newsfeed. Have a good day.
Yes, I remember that.
Right? Like there wasn't this like constant consumption. And one of the things, and you and I have known each other for quite a long time, but you know, one of the greatest things I ever did is when I deleted like 1 million followers a couple years ago, because I had this massive awakening as a food blogger, and I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't know what I want to do. But I made a rule with myself that I wasn't allowed to consume content. And I tried to do it for a year, but I went 3 years without doing it. No books, no TV shows, no music, no social media. And everyone's like, oh my God, that must've been incredible. I'm like, no, for like 6 months, I was going through the equivalent of like what I felt with opiate withdrawals. Like, it felt, and I was an addict. So like, it felt the same, like that constant dopamine and serotonin and all of it. And I was like, but eventually I realized that if I couldn't consume, there's only one thing left I could do, which was create. And that's what entrepreneurship is. It's trusting yourself to be iterative and be in the process, and then throw out a paint stroke on a canvas that you've never seen before. And like, to even relate it to entrepreneurs, like if you've ever seen a painter paint, I'm dumb. I'm not an artist, right? Like we joke that I was a Marine, but I genuinely feel like book smart Marine and life smart, like really genius. But I didn't realize, like I would look at this painting on the wall and I'm like, how did you paint that? And I'm like, I don't get it. And then I saw a friend painting and I was like, wait, there's like 7,000 layers of paint underneath that final picture. And I was like, if you don't like it, you paint over it and bring it better and bring it better. And I was like, it like broke my brain, because I thought they sat down and painted the Mona Lisa.
And ta-da,
and it was there. And it genuinely like broke my brain, because I was like, you've gone through hundreds of iterations and improvements and parts and pieces to bring this to life. And you said something a little while ago where you're like, it's so simple. And I've said this to people before. I was like, how many of us have ever read a fortune cookie with a piece of advice on it that we can remember, right? And everybody like raises their hand. I'm like, okay, cool. How many of us wish that we simply listened to it every day for the last 10 years? And everyone's like, yeah, right? Because I have a mentor who says, nobody can guarantee your success, but they can guarantee your plan to get closer. Like success can be scheduled. All the blueprints are out there, but it's really hitting the behaviors. And it reminds me of that story of the clay pots with the professor who had 2 semesters of students. And he said, okay, this semester, all of you have the entire semester to bring me back a perfect one singular clay pot. And then the other one, he's like, I need you to bring me back as many as you can. And the ones that brought back as many as they can not only had more of them, but the quality was better than the students who only had one.
Sure.
And it's this false finish line that we get in this consumption, and we're like comparison, but all we're really doing is preventing ourselves from putting another brushstroke on the canvas.
Yeah.
And it's this like humility journey that I think is lacking for people. And to your point, because we're afraid to go spend time with ourselves, or when we do, we look at that mirror and we make ourselves bad and wrong instead of celebrating the gain that we've made, instead of dreading the gap that's ahead of us, knowing that no one can come do this. Like, no one can come build your retreat center for you.
Right.
And you're not going to build the Taj Mahal in a week. You're going to build it brick by brick by brick. And as you lay a brick, you're like, you know what? I thought that's where I wanted the bathroom, but really the bathroom would have a better view over here. Let's move it. And you allow this iterative process, but it's really also this process of building confidence as you go, not in the result, but in your ability to take intentional action and shorten the gap between failure or roadblock and the next course of action you take.
For sure. And we've found here too, like since we're homesteading as well as building the thing, it's like when we got here, it was completely off grid. There was nothing. And we're like, we need a place to go to the bathroom. I would love to have a shower, not have to go to the truck stop. A great place to do laundry would be here, you know. And gradually, bit by bit, we look at this, but my husband and my son are doing the stuff. My husband thinks he's like MacGyver, which is so cool. And so the first version, usually it's okay. It works. It's a great improvement over what we had. But then the second version is where it's like, okay, now we know, you know, and the third is even better. And it's just that freedom to iterate. And I think we've lost that. We have this idea that we got to come out of the gate perfect with something. No wonder we don't make more offers. You know, like,
Yeah. And it's really like an epidemic, because it never existed in the first place, but it's the amount of things that we consume and that we allow ourselves to consume that creates that doubt. But all we're really doing is moving our own starting line. Like, we're just giving ourselves reasons not to start.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like, the faster you start, the faster you learn, and the faster you learn, the faster you make progress, right? And this is why, like, I'm so bullish with people about like really honing in on this relationship with your spouse. Like, you know, I live in Montana. I live in Montana because my connection with God is out in those mountains behind me. Like, every day I am out there. I drive in silence. I'm staring at the Swan Mountain Range. I'm staring at Big Mountain. I see a herd of elk and I'm like, boom, 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 boom. But like, it's that space where ideas come. And I even joke about this too with people, because you know, I like to paint this picture because like I believe in God, and I say like, you've never been quiet enough to hear God's whispers. But I'm like, have you ever been driving in the car in silence and you're like, you know what? Susan just popped into my brain, right? And I'm like, do you think the night before you went to bed, you were like, you know what, tomorrow at 2:23 p.m. when I'm driving down Highway 93 and I see this bald eagle fly over me, I'm going to think of Susan. And I'm like, where do you think that comes from, right? Maybe it's your unconscious mind. Maybe it's God. Maybe it's your intuition. I was like, but have you ever thought to think about, instead of asking why, you just say, what can I do about this? And I will tell you right now, one of my biggest secrets to success is when I get those thoughts, I immediately text that person. And I can tell you right now that doing that has accounted for millions of dollars of revenue in my life, because I'll send a text. I'm like, Susan, oh my God, it's so good. I was driving and I thought about you. I want to see how you were. And you're like, George, you didn't know. I opened a retreat center. I'd love to have you speak. I'd love to have you on my podcast, right? There's this like deep knowing and understanding. But if all we have is the noise of the world around us, it teaches us how to think. And you know, Jim Quick, he's a dear friend of mine. But the reason I was called to not consume content is he challenged me one day and he said, I know why you see the world the way you see the world. I'm like, how? He's like, let me see your music playlist. And he started like calling me out on the music I was listening to. And it was like, my life is hard, or it's like this gangster rap, or like how difficult things are, or how impossible things are. And he's like, no wonder why you think the way you do and you feel the way you do. Look at what you're consuming and surrounding yourself with. And we like turn on Netflix and watch horrible shows or watch people get ripped and roasted online. And then we forget that all of those things are programming our unconscious mind. Yeah. And if we remove that noise, we start to tune in to the things that really support us, whether it's your vision or God or higher power, but it's you trusting you knowing that when you take that step, it can only lead to something positive because it wasn't there before.
For sure. I mean, that's how this whole entrepreneur retreat center started. I was on a long drive in the silence. I had done Perfect Average Day, Frank Kern's version. And I'm like, all right. And I'm driving, and all of a sudden it was like, hey, you should totally build this retreat center. I'm like, excuse me, what? I come home, hey, hubby, guess what? Hear me out, hear me out. And here we are, But when you have all that constant bombardment from all that external stuff, you can't hear it. And
to your point, we were talking about this before the show, but like pre-COVID, I was on paper, like I made it. Like I was like every goal I've ever had, I was living in the vision. Like I'm talking multiple 6 figures a month in revenue. Like everything was running smooth and all of it. And then all of a sudden,
screech,
from 300, 400 grand a month down to nothing. And I was like 2 houses and cars and horses and all these things that I thought mattered, like all these things that I thought mattered. And I'm like, how the heck am I going to replace this? Panic attacks, like anxiety attacks, not sleeping, neurotic, like migraines, everything. And this is the craziest thing. And I'm so grateful for nature for this because it genuinely changed my life. And for whatever reason, I had like an intuitive hit from God. And the only thing that I knew I could do was go hiking. Because I was in Mammoth, I was at the mountains and nobody was out because it was COVID. And I was like, I made a rule with myself and I'm like, I'm going to hike until I get clarity. That's all I said. I'm going to hike until I get clarity. And I think it was around day 20 or 21. I get to the top of this mountain. And I'm just sitting on this rock looking at the whole valley. And I had one thought in my brain. And the thought was this: why have you owned a podcast microphone for 7 years and never used it?
Oh, that's a great one.
And here's the craziest part. My logical brain took over and said, your smart idea is to come back on the internet that you've been off of for 3 years to replace 350 grand of revenue with a podcast from the ground up. And then I was like, I made the rule. So I literally went home, whipped out the podcast mic, and I started recording shows. And I launched my podcast that day. And it was 3 episodes a week. And sure as crap, I maybe launched 10 episodes. And on the podcast, I was like, and by the way, if anybody's listening to this, we're all in uncertain times. I'd love to get together on Zoom and all of us have this co-working meeting and support each other. Well, turns out 4 weeks later, 200 people showed up on Zoom. Of the 200 people, because I was manually pushing the episodes, I was like, hey, listen to this, listen to this. I took notes on everything they said. I wrote an ebook of like how to thrive in uncertain times. And then I was answering all their questions and I turned it into an outline. And I was like, guys, I can solve all of these problems. Like, really, I'm like, if you guys want this, I'll make this. And I was like, anybody, give me a price and whatever you say, I'll do. And someone's like $750. And there were 198 people on the call. I will never forget this. And I was like, I outlined it all on the call. It was like a 4-hour Zoom call. And I was like, this is going to be 62 videos. And they're like, done. I was like, I can record all of these tomorrow. Wow. If you guys want this and a couple of you buy it tonight, I will have it up by midnight tomorrow. There were 198 people on the call and 197 of them bought it. And the next day, Sue, I sat down and I recorded and edited 62 videos. I put them up on Samcart and I delivered them that next night. And then those people through COVID saved their businesses and then turned into my next mastermind because they're like, we want more of this. And it genuinely started to rebuild what was there. All because I gave myself the space, but I also had faith and trust. And when I got the message, I took action on it. And it genuinely like saved my life.
Yeah. And others, like 197 other people, and then everybody that they serve. Like that ripple effect is crazy, George. That's amazing. I love that you like got that and you're like, sounds crazy, but okay, I'm doing it. Like,
and truthfully, like I hate to say this, but I think a lot of mistakes that entrepreneurs make is they wait until their back is against the wall with that pressure. And I had nothing to lose. Like there was nothing left. Right. And I was like, oh, and then I realized in those moments though, that was my pattern as an entrepreneur. I would achieve something. I would think I made it. And then I would stop doing the things that made it work until the pressure increased. And I'd let my foot off the gas. And then it was like this cycle. And so that was the one where I also caught it to where that's why, and I'll make an incredible book recommendation for everybody right now. Michael Easter wrote this book called The Comfort Crisis. And it's really an incredible manual on how to put pressure on ourselves to make sure that we're constantly growing and evolving. Because, you know, like I think about the first time I ever sat in a stillness practice, right? Out in nature. I couldn't make it 30 seconds without like wanting to leave, turning my phone, checking this, right? And then I'll never forget the day I sat for 8 hours and I was like, leave me alone. Like I didn't want anything to do with anybody, and even assigning it to people. But I realized that like we go to the gym or we'll go for a run, right? And the moment we commit to a 3-mile run, we get 2 miles and we're like, oh, I'm tired, I'm out of breath. And our brain goes, yeah, but you're getting stronger, keep going. But then in entrepreneurship, the moment it gets hard, we're like, oh my God, I'm failing, I'm out. And I was like, but what other gym are you going to find? Like the discomfort is a part of the process. Like, of course, you're not supposed to know every answer. None of us can. No matter how good I am at entrepreneurship or marketing or email or paid media, there's still somebody better. And I still get to constantly improve, but we have this like weird relationship of like almost entitlement of like, oh, it's supposed to be like, I got it, right? And I'm like, for every successful funnel you see, there's 700 failures. For every successful offer you see, for every email you see, for every social post you see, like, and we were even joking, I was like, George, you don't prep for podcasts? I'm like, I've done over 10,000 podcasts. Like I can do them in my sleep and I love them, but yet I still watch them back. And then I'm like, I could have answered that better. I could have been more clear. I could have painted the picture better. And it's just falling in love with the process that really sets us up to win.
For sure. It's that sense of being willing to keep learning, you know, because, you know, we just, when we stop, then that's where stuff starts to slide. And man, oh, that's amazing. Well, what is the current offer that you've got for people?
Yeah. So really, and this is what I love. I genuinely believe I'm like Robin Hood. I want to help everybody. So the podcast is for everybody and I give away everything for free. And then we have our alliance, which you're going to laugh at me, but my former $10,000 a month mastermind is now $100 a month because I wanted to help the greater mission. And it's our alliance where we do like 4 calls a month, everything on mindset, customer journey, marketing, habits, behaviors. And it's my ecosystem to help you become the entrepreneur, to hire me as like a one-on-one coach or consultant. And so all I do is the podcast, the alliance. We do like 3 live events a year where we charge costs. We just met in Montana.
Yay.
We had a house on the river with a mountain in the background. And I was like, go outside, go get some fresh air. Now let's come talk marketing. I do that. And then I love, you know, when the entrepreneurs are at the right scale, which is typically, you know, over $400,000, $500,000 a year, coming and adding rocket fuel, like being the Oz behind their curtain. I'm like, all right, let's scale your business. Let's scale your offers, your customer journey. Let's get deep into all of these things. And genuinely though, like I love helping everybody. Like I want to have a cup of coffee with everybody. I want to talk to everybody. I want to support you. I want to give away anything I can that helps. Like I believe in rising tides, rise all ships.
Yeah.
And I made a mission a long time ago, even when you and I met, I was like, I'm going to do this different than anybody I know. And I'm like, I just want to serve. Like, I just want to serve people's faces off, and God put that on my heart. And so, yeah, the podcast is the best place. And then I always tell everybody, you know, we're a cup of coffee away from me and you both having a dramatic shift in our lives. So like, give me the chance to split an Americano and see if I can help you in any way. And that's how I operate.
That's fantastic. I mean, that is truly, guys, you know, I was 2018, 2019, I think, that I'd met you. And I remember like, that is the one thing that really, really stuck out, is like, George is all about the person. And it shouldn't be that it stands out in the marketplace, but it really does. And it's lasting. What is this? 5 years, 6 years later. And this is what I remember about you. It's like, George serves people.
Yeah.
You know, he loves God, serves people. And that's, you know, wow. And it's just an incredible thing to be able to have that be your calling card. So I love it that you're still, you know, you're still
and
George.
Truthfully, like I have my own shadows. It holds me accountable to the days where I'm in doubt and I'm like, oh my God, I just want to hide on the couch. I want to be everything. I'm like, there's 20 people who DM'd you that you have the opportunity to connect with, help them. And then I get them on the call and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did this. Like,
right. I love this. This is great. I love my life.
Thank you for helping me do it. Right. Like I genuinely believe in abundance, and I believe that there's enough to go around. And I think if all of us collaborated together, we still wouldn't even come close to touching the GDP of this country. And everybody gets to win if we believe in collaboration over competition. And like, that's what it is. And my mission is simple. Like, I have to earn the right for you to pay me. Like if I haven't had enough value in your life as friends, then we're never exchanging a dollar, because that's not how business works, right? Like there's no entitlement here. Like I just want to do cool stuff with cool people, help you have a bigger impact. It's truthfully like, I'm not opening a retreat center in the mountains of Tennessee. You are. And I'm like, how can I help you do more of it? Like, how can I get more people there? Like, I think if all of us kind of adopt that philosophy, it's a lot easier and faster way for everyone to win the game and to always focus on what truly matters. Because at the end of the day, and we said this before the show, and I'll say this to everybody, your bank account balance isn't going to be on your headstone. It doesn't matter. And if you sacrifice your life to build that number, the only thing you're not going to enjoy is your life. And I say to people all the time, I want my success to be measured not by how many people show up to my funeral, but how many people show up to silently support my kids when I'm no longer here. Like that's what I believe in. Like, I want my kids to not know there's an army of 1 million angels that will always take care of them because of who their dad was. And I think that the more we all adopt that and embody that, life is short. And I think the gift of being a Marine and spending 13 years of my life in hell is that I got to realize how short life is and how instantaneous it is. And I think all too often we forget that.
It gives you perspective.
1,000%, 1,000%. And like these moments, like this is a gift, like being able to be across the world, you on Starlink in a barn, me in the mountains of Montana, who's about to throw Starlink in my car to record the podcast outside because I'm like, why don't I record it outside? It's Montana, right? Like, but to be able to do this and have these conversations, like, I feel like this is the meaning of life that we forget about because we get lost in the hustle and bustle. And I think the more that we come back to this, the more everybody wins.
Yeah. George, I wish everybody knew you, like, especially people who don't understand what an entrepreneur really is, because you are like everything that you've just said. That is the entrepreneurship that I'm in love with, the entrepreneur that I think we make the world a better place because of this whole perspective, the willingness to grow, the willingness to serve, the passion to really, help people. And I just love I love it. Where can people find out more?
Yeah, I'm gonna tell everybody right now. Sue knows this. My favorite color is pink, and I'm not joking. It's genuinely my favorite color. So I have the pinkest website that you will ever see. And I did have a pink mohawk until like four weeks ago. But truthfully, it was taking me 20 minutes a day to maintain this thing. And I wanted my time back. I wanted my bald head back because it was so much easier. And so I rocked a pink mohawk because my son asked for it. But my website is mindofgeorge.com and everything is there. And truthfully, and I'll say this to everybody listening, if you have a question, if I can support you, if you want to share anything, like DM me on Instagram. It's George Bryant. Like, I would love to hear your question. I would love to support you. I will respond with a video. I will give you anything I have, access to anything I have, support of anything I have, introduce you to anybody I know. But the easiest place to remember, and you will see the pinkest website ever, is mindofgeorge.com. My podcast is there. My Instagram is there. Our events are there. And then my Instagram is the best place because it's really me on the back end. And it might take me a day or two because I do send videos to everybody, but that's me.
That's amazing. That's unheard of. Most people are hiring people to go pose as them in Instagram and answer the DMs and send them to a sales page. This is not George. That is not George, guys.
No, because here's the thing. You got to talk to me because you might realize neither of us want to have dinner with each other. I'm like, great, but we might as well get that out of the way. And for all these people that try to automate relationships, I'm like, if you're married, let me know if you'd be sleeping in the bedroom with your wife if you relegated your relationship to an automated text message once a week.
Yeah, not likely.
Not likely, right? Automations are great, tools are great, but you can't automate human connection. And no matter what, and with the rise of AI and all this inauthenticity, to your point earlier, it's crazy I have a job, but the truth is that we always will because people crave connection and authenticity. And so most people eliminate their greatest superpower, which is connecting with people.
Yeah. All right, you guys, you heard it here. And follow George. I mean, if you've loved this, and I'm sure you have, this is somebody that really, like, I don't make that recommendation often and I don't make it lightly, but George is where it's at for that. Thank you, George. I really appreciate you.
Oh, I'll do this anytime. We can do 100 of these. I'm going to come do them in person in Tennessee when this place gets built.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
I'm in. We'll bring entrepreneurs out. We'll have a party, like party in the woods of Tennessee. You have a few more mosquitoes than I do, but like I'll bring bug spray.
That works. Yeah.